Point of view. There's three main points of view in literature: first person, third person limited, and omniscient. Today we're going to talk about what's the big deal and how do they impact a story. Point of view does more than tell whose story it is. It determines how much the narrator is allowed to know, as well as what extent the narrator can perceive the character's thoughts and emotions and share them with you, the reader. So ultimately, point of view determines how much the narrator knows and how much you, as the reader, know. Omniscient point of view. In this point of view, the reader can know the thoughts of all the characters. The writer can take the reader to any scene in the story and reveal as much or as little of the story that is needed. For example, if we were to look at Hansel and Gretel, written in omniscient point of view, it might read like this. Hansel walked ahead of Gretel. After all, he knew he belonged in front because Gretel was just a girl. Gretel dropped breadcrumbs behind her as she went, knowing that her bumbling brother couldn't be counted on to find his way home from the outhouse, let alone from the middle of the woods. Ahead of them, an old witch waited, her stomach rumbling at the thought of what a delicious dinner the two plump children would make. This is omniscient because if you notice, we know Hansel, Gretel, and the witch's kind of private thoughts and emotions. We get a good picture of everything that is going on in this scene with everyone involved. There are some pitfalls to omniscient, though. The writer offers sometimes too many interpretations, and it hurts the story. The writer can switch between characters, and that can be awkward and confuse the reader, or the author or writer reveals just too much, and it isn't like real life. Those are some of the pitfalls that you can have with omniscient. However, keep in mind that with omniscient, the writer can choose to reveal all characters' thoughts but one, and that definitely can increase the mystery and be a purposeful choice for them. Third person limited is the next point of view. This limits the point of view to one character's thoughts and feelings. It adds suspense and mystery automatically because we only know one character's thoughts and feelings, and it makes the story a little bit more personal. So, for example, if we go back to Hansel and Gretel, if Hansel and Gretel, it was written in third person limited point of view, it might read like this. Hansel walked ahead of Gretel. Gretel dropped breadcrumbs behind her as she went, knowing that her bumbling brother couldn't be counted on to find his way home from the outhouse, let alone from the middle of the woods. If you notice, there is no mention of the witch. The mention of the witch is gone because Gretel has no knowledge of her at this point. And that's how, when we change from omniscient to third person limited, a story can change and be impacted. Also notice, we don't know what the brother is feeling or thinking either. Only Gretel. Then we have first person point of view. With first person point of view, this is the only point of view where an actual character in the story is telling you the story. There's actually no outside narrator like we see in omniscient and third person limited. First person is a character telling you the story. So if we were to take a look at Hansel and Gretel from first person, it might read like this. Hansel walked ahead of me. I made sure I dropped breadcrumbs behind me as I went, since my bumbling brother couldn't be counted on to find his way home from the outhouse, let alone from the middle of the woods. So if you notice, the entire passage is italicized because these are all of Gretel's thoughts. They are coming directly from her instead of that outside narrator. So we're only getting her thoughts. Notice the mention of the witch is still gone because Gretel doesn't know she's there. And this is kind of how that story would change if we looked at it in a first-person perspective. So what is the big deal? Why do authors choose first versus third, or limited versus omniscient? Well, first person, you only get what the main character is doing. Unless he or she is there to witness the bad guy, you won't know that they're there. So that can increase suspense and it can increase mystery. But omniscient allows the side stories to happen for the reader, and that can be quite engaging. However, omniscient is harder to write since the author does have to deal with all the characters instead of just one. With first person, the author has to develop all the characters through the eyes of one main character. Instead of kind of that outside observer, everything has to be channeled through that one main character. So first versus third, Authors make that decision based on the impact that they want the point of view to have in their story. And hopefully, through this lesson and through looking at that Hansel and Gretel story, you realize that point of view is kind of a big deal because it definitely impacts how you understand and are engaged in the story.